probably won't be all that quick, but I'm just doing this while I got the chance, since it is 11 o'clock and it's Sunday night and I have to get up in the morning to go to work. But nevertheless, I have thought about something that I did want to bring up, and it's a pretty, I think it's a pretty important topic. That is, I think it's important that when you're on your Nofap journey, you have to find out where your niche is. Because we're all different, you see, and we all have different strengths and different weaknesses. We all have different things that set us off. And everyone's journey is going to be different from another person. I mean, we can provide advice, or people that do videos like this can provide you with advice on how to combat this sort of thing and how to better yourself. But in the end, you have to sort of find out for yourself where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are. Because yeah, we're all on a different journey. So let me just give an illustration for that. When it comes to PMO, and I know this is something that I've been watching some various other Nofap vloggers, if you like to call them that. I suppose I call them vloggers. Other guys that make videos like myself. I watch just a few different kind of people doing it. Sometimes some new people that do it, which is cool. And it's interesting seeing some of the ways that people explain, like where their weaknesses are, and they sort of explain at what point or under what circumstance do they relapse. And I'm finding out a lot of people, a lot of the guys that are doing this, they seem to relapse. When it comes to PMO, they seem to relapse more to the M and the O and less to the P. Like, for a couple people that I've seen so far, I know specifically, they say they don't have an issue with avoiding P, but their weakness or their downfall is at the is when it comes to the M. Okay, now I know lots and lots of people have this issue. Excuse me, I'm just trying to get in a suitable sitting position. But for me, it's completely opposite. I don't have and this is going to sound unusual, but I'm being honest with you. For me, when it comes to PMO, the M has hardly ever been the issue, if at all, really. For me, the issue's always been the P. I know that my weakness is always the P, and it's hardly ever the M. So when I hear about guys that are struggling with the M and the O, they'll say things like, that their weakness is that they'll more likely relapse when they're, for instance, in bed at night or in the morning when they're laying in bed, or something like that. Because that's a time, or that's an environment or a situation where they relapse, because the M is their weakness, and and for them it usually, the focal point of that is when they are lying in bed at night or in the morning or whatever, and they're bored or whatever. But for me, that's never been an issue. That's not really something that I've had a problem with. But for me, my weakness or my downfall always comes from the P. So I have to understand that my weakness is when I'm on the computer, when I'm using the internet, of course. So I have to know that any time I'm going to relapse, like 95% of the time, if I'm going to relapse, I'm going to be sitting on the computer. It's going to be on the computer. So technically, to lower the chances of me falling is that I have to be wary of what I'm doing when I'm on the computer. Makes sense. So people that people that have started doing Nofap, if you're new to this, and you think that you're frightened because you think that around every corner there's going to be a relapse or there's something that's going to set you off, it's not necessarily the case. For me, what I do is I hone in on where my weakness is, and then once I can figure out where my weakness is coming from, that way I can hone in on my focus towards it when I'm in that zone. So in this case, on the computer. But for me, because I know I'm not going to relapse while I'm lying in bed at night or in the morning, like a lot of the other guys do. For me, if I'm lying in bed in the morning or the night, my head isn't thinking, oh, don't relapse. Like this is a place to relapse. Don't relapse. No, don't do it. Like that's not consciously in my head. But when I'm on the computer, of course, I have to consciously think in my head, be careful what you do. So, but my journey's different to your journey, I'd imagine. If your scope's too wide, what you have to do is you have to try and understand as I said, the environment or the situation that you're in when a relapse occurs, and see if you can sort of hone in on where the relapse is happening, and then that will also give you an opportunity to figure out where your strength is as well. So a lot of people say, go out if you're having a temptation or whatever, go out in public, because you can't PMO in public, which is true. So you can start with that, for instance. So you can think, okay, so my strength is when I'm in public, okay, and then you sort of build your strengths or your list of where you're strongest, and then also understand where your weakness is. Then you'll be able to determine what's the best method to combat your PMO, or to combat against it. Maybe that helps put it in perspective for some people. And now I'm in another room. What happened was I tried to just edit the video that I was looking at, that was just on a moment ago. But the audio and the video weren't synced correctly, so it didn't look very good, so I thought I'd just refilm this quickly. So what basically happened was a few nights ago I began to go down another road towards some inappropriate things, I guess you could say. Now, I didn't actually look at the PORN, but I was heading in that direction, if you can sort of understand what I'm saying, what I was looking at. Now for me, it's not so much the what I looked at, but the why, It's not the what, but the why. So technically, no, I didn't relapse, because I didn't look at the PORN, but, in certain ways I did relapse, because I still gave in to my desires to still look at saying that wasn't right. Because for me, as I said, it's the why, not the what. For me, there's no difference between looking at a girl or checking out a girl who's fully clothed, or checking out a girl who's not. It's the same principle for me. But apart from that fact, where was I going with this? Yeah, my reaction to that, or that although I wasn't looking at P, my reaction was the same as if I was looking at it. Because usually in the past, if I did look at it, I would feel really sick, like physically sick, and I'd lay down on the floor in like the fetal position, and I feel real depressed and upset and sick. Now, I kind of felt like that the other night, and even though I wasn't, even though I suppose what I was looking at was a lot more milder than, the PORN. And maybe that's testimony that my sensitivity towards this kind of thing is beginning to grow more, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. So yeah, that happened, and of course, I wish I didn't do it. But there's a part of me that now realizes that although my reaction to that was so negative, so like I hadn't had such a negative reaction towards something like that. Like 2 years ago, if that happened, it would be like, I wouldn't have worried about it. But now, my reaction towards this kind of thing is, it's like something as small as that just sets me off, like on an equally negative reaction, no matter the measure. And I've got to realise now that I can't be fighting against 90% of it, and then just letting 10% in, or just letting these loopholes happen, or trying to justify it, or trying to find ways around it, because that's stupid too. And I've got to stop doing that. And that's my revelation that I had over the last few days. Is just even like the minor, tiny things, like that's not me. I've got to stop that. I don't want to be one of those people that ends up PMOing for 20 or 30 years of their life every day, which I've read about, and people that do it every day and they say they don't have a problem, or they say they're okay with it. Like, I don't want to be that person. And I'm sure if you're watching this video, you don't want to be that person. So yeah, as I mentioned a few weeks back, you got to fight. You got to push forward. Me, I'm really beginning to narrow down on this thing now. I'm really beginning to I suppose iron out the creases, or tie up the loose ends, where I'm able to distinguish what's appropriate and what's not, and really tighten the bolts on the things that may seem appropriate to some people or a lot of people, but for me, I got to have this across the board, no exceptions. That's just my personal thing. I'm not saying everyone has to do that. Everyone's on a different journey, as I've mentioned. But this is my niche, and you got to find what your niche is. You got to find where your weakness is and how you combat that. But yeah, we're on a journey.